Hello, class. Back with you again. This is the second go at this. Chapter 14 now. So we've done Chapter 1, Introduction to Anatomy and Physiology. Chapter 2, the Chemistry of the Body. Chapter 3, we talked about cells, the smallest unit of life. Chapter 4, histology, study of tissues. Chapter 5, we talked about the integumentary system. Then we skipped to chapter 11, where we introduced the nervous system, peripheral nervous system, central nervous system. Chapter 12, where we had the central nervous system, which is probably, I consider, one of the most difficult chapters in this book, especially, well, at least in Anatomy and Physiology 1, central nervous system in chapter 12. And then chapter 13, we go into the peripheral nervous system. But then chapter 14 and chapter 15 are sort of extensions of the peripheral nervous system, right? So we kind of split up. We did the central nervous system in one chapter, in chapter 12. But then we split up the peripheral nervous system really into 3 chapters. 13 is sort of like the peripheral nervous system on a whole. 14, we talk about the autonomic section of the peripheral nervous system, which involves the central nervous system, of course. And then 15, we talk about special senses, which is a lot of the special senses are the cranial nerves, deal primarily with the cranial nerves, your sense of taste, your sense of hearing, your sense of smell. These special senses, the cranial nerves, which are part of the peripheral nervous system, but they are obviously directly connected to your central nervous system. They detect the signal, but send it to your central nervous system, which then does the processing so that you you can taste something and say, this is a donut, this is water, this is whatever it is. I hope everybody is safe and sound as you watch this video. Hopefully you're in the comfort of your own home, or maybe you're watching me on the go, I don't know, at work or something, but wherever you are, hopefully everything is safe and sound. Now, as we get into this autonomic nervous system, remember, when you think of autonomic, think of automatic, think of, something that is involuntary, all right? The autonomic nervous system in homeostasis. Homeostasis is sort of your body maintaining things at a specific level, maintaining your balance. Remember things like your pH has to stay at 7.34. Your blood pressure has to stay at a certain level as well. We need a certain amount of what else? I'm trying to think. Certain amount of water in the body. You need a certain amount of water. If you have too much, you'll urinate it out. If you have too little, your urine will look yellow. You know that as well. So your body temperature, that's another thing I was thinking about. Another obvious one, your body temperature needs to stay at 98.6 degrees. Obviously, if you have something like the coronavirus, they take your temperature, you're 99 degrees or 100 degrees. They know right away you have a fever. Something's not quite right in your body systems. But your body wants to maintain a temperature, a certain pH balance, certain electrolyte balance, all these things. And what are they controlled by? A lot of it's controlled by your autonomic nervous system and your endocrine system. So chapter 15 is special senses, and then in chapter 16, we get into the endocrine system. All right, so here we go. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. You can email me, or you can set up a time to call me on the phone. Just email me and you can set that up if you want to. Also, you can set up a time to do a Zoom conference. I can do a one-on-one video, you know, you looking at me looking at you, and you can ask me questions directly and I can answer them right away, hopefully. All right, so let's overview. Let's do section 1 of chapter 14, the autonomic nervous system, the involuntary arm of your peripheral nervous system, right? So you have the somatic section of your peripheral nervous system. Remember that. The somatic section is like, you know, your voluntary, so your skeletal muscles, for instance. I think it sends a signal down to my spinal cord, out through my cervical spine, my brachial plexus, into the muscles in my biceps, cause me to curl my arm and pick my arm up, all right? That's somatic, that's voluntary control. You also have autonomic, so it's happening without me consciously thinking about it. It's happening involuntarily, also known as a visceral. Whenever you see visceral, think of organs usually. So like glands, think of different glands in your body, think of your stomach, think of your heart, different organs that need to be controlled, but you don't have to think about it for them to be controlled, right? Your autonomic nervous system. And we divide the nervous system into central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, right? Then central nervous system, brain and spinal cord, peripheral nervous system, your 12 cranial nerves, 31 sets of spinal nerves, peripheral nervous system, right? Then we further divide your peripheral nervous system into autonomic and somatic, right? And then, somatic is your voluntary, autonomic is your involuntary, and then we further divide the autonomic into sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic is your fight or flight. You're, working out, or I just saw a lion and I have to take off running. And then you have your parasympathetic, which is your rest and digest, right? So that's more of your overseeing your vital functions, okay? Sort of like you're keeping everything balanced, okay? But they both, it's not like one works and the other one completely shuts off. They both sort of work together, but one sort of dominates. When we're resting and digesting, like you ate a meal, you lay down, your parasympathetic is more in control, but your sympathetic is still working. Just like when you are running on that treadmill, or you're turned up at work because somebody just walked through the door. You're working in the ER and somebody just walked through the door bleeding, and you gotta go. Your sympathetic is more at play, but your parasympathetic is still working. Right? So they work together. Right? Between this, the parasympathetic and sympathetic, your autonomic nervous system controls things like your heart rate, your blood pressure, like I said, digestion, urine control. All those happen autonomically. You may say, well, wait a minute. I go to the bathroom, I urinate. That's a controlled function. And yes, it seems like that. And it is to a degree. But like I said, I think I mentioned this in class before. Our bodies are actually designed to urinate autonomically. Like, we train our minds to control. If you look at the urinary system, kidneys, urethras, bladder, ureter, that goes, depending on male or female, how far that goes. But, we control our bodies to sort of hold it, but we're not really built that way. We're more so built to, once the bladder fills up, it's supposed to just empty, sort of like dogs do. But we don't, because we've trained our bodies to control that, right? So it actually is autonomic, even though we've learned to override the autonomic with a somatic control, right? So these are all things that are controlled by your autonomic nervous system. Okay, so continuing on, autonomic nervous system manages vital processes through the visceral reflex arcs. Okay, so here we have Sensory stimulus leads to predictable motor response, right? We talked about reflexes before, a little bit at the end of last chapter, but we're going to talk about it more here. All right, so your body realizes that something is happening and it has an automatic response to it. That's considered a reflex. So we have these reflex arcs, right? So food goes in your stomach, your body automatically responds, releases different acids into your stomach to be able to digest that food. Pepsin, for instance, protein goes in your stomach, your body releases the pepsin in your stomach, converts to pepsinogen. It's a whole process, and it helps your body to be able to digest proteins, for instance. All right, so sensory signals from the viscera, so your organs and skin, are sent by afferent, remember afferent sensory neurons to the brain or spinal cord, integrated by the CNS interneurons through the integrating, sends it out from the CNS via efferent neurons and the cranial and spinal nerves, usually to the autonomic ganglia. We're going to talk about that. The ganglia is simply structures containing nerve cell bodies. Autonomic ganglia send impulses via other efferent neurons to various target organs, trigger a motor response, right? That's the general pathway, right? Your stomach senses something, sends a signal to the brain. Brain figures out, food's in my stomach, I need to send the signal back to the stomach. So afferent towards the brain, sensory, efferent away from the brain, motor. This all happens without you thinking about it. Food in your, you don't think, digest the food in my stomach. Your body does this automatically. It's an autonomic response, right? Sends a signal back. That signal goes through the autonomic ganglia, which we're going to talk about. You'll see that structure. And then autonomic ganglia send impulses via other efferent neurons, other motor neurons, to various target organs, such as the stomach, to cause it to release the acid to be able to digest the food in your stomach, or to cause it to churn, for instance, right? And that's just showing you that pathway that I was just talking about. Right, so this term ganglion, don't let it confuse you. It sounds like, oh no, we've mentioned it before, right? Remember, afferent, sensory, efferent, motor, ganglion, or ganglia. You'll see that either of those terms are just cell bodies, right? So this is, you'll have a synapse here. So the signal will come to here. It'll synapse. Remember the different parts of the neuron: cell body, dendrites, axon. All right. So you'll have the cell body here. So you'll have, this is where you'll be synapsing, and it'll send its signal back to the stomach to let it know, okay, let's make it happen. Let's digest this food. All right, main differences between the motor divisions of the PNS, right? Remember, we have somatic, which is voluntary. Skeletal muscle is usually what's triggered. Voluntary means you think about it and it moves. Autonomic, involuntary. Smooth muscle cells, cardiac muscle cells, and glands, right? Smooth muscles, usually the muscle around your organs is smooth muscle. Cardiac muscle, your heart, different glands. Involuntary actions, major differences. All right, we're gonna see some other differences. The autonomic nervous system, neurons do not directly innervate their target like somatic motor neurons. Require 2-neuron circuit, remember? 2-neuron circuit. So one neuron sending a signal, ganglia, another neuron. So that's a 2-neuron circuit, okay? We have this term preganglionic and postganglionic, all right? Preganglionic, initial efferent. Remember, efferent is motor, sending a motor signal, telling it to do something. Cell body resides within the CNS. Axons release acetylcholine. That's a neurotransmitter. Don't be shocked by that word. Postganglionic, after the ganglion, cell body resides in the autonomic ganglion. In the PNS, your peripheral nervous system, axons travel to the target cells. And they can trigger inhibitory or excitatory responses, right? They can cause something to be excited, or they can inhibit something from happening using acetylcholine or norepinephrine. We'll talk about this more, so don't be too confused with it yet, right? But this is a good diagram for you to pay attention to, all right? So somatic nervous system, the spinal cord, you'll have that, is where you'll have the sort of the cell body, okay, somewhere in the spinal cord. Remember those, remember the structure of the spinal cord, white matter surrounded by gray matter. So you'll have like the cell bodies in that gray matter in the spinal cord. And then you have an axons extending. Remember bundles of axons? That's what we call nerves, okay? And so you have those axons extending. See them myelinated to the skeletal muscle. Autonomic nervous system, a little bit different. In the spinal cord or in the CNS, you'll have what we call the preganglionic neuron, and then you'll have a postganglionic neuron, right? So neurons is ganglia is a cell body. So this one is the first one that's called preganglionic, and this is postganglionic, and it leads to smooth muscle in your, or cardiac muscle in your organs or glands, right? A little difference between another difference in the autonomic nervous system is this preganglionic axons of the sympathetic nervous system. Remember, sympathetic is your fight or flight, are usually short, and postganglionic axons are long. So the neuron that's preganglionic has a short axon, and the neuron that's postganglionic has a long axon. And just the reverse is true for the parasympathetic. So your sympathetic, your fight or flight, you have two neurons. The first neuron, when the signals come in, the first neuron has a short axon, the second has a long. Parasympathetic is the reverse. The first axon has a long, the first neuron has a long axon, the second axon has a short, right? That's one way we can decipher between the two, right? So we have this diagram here, right? So I know some of these terms might get a little confusing, right? So sympathetic is normally in the thoracic and lumbar spinal cord, your T and your L, part of your spinal cord, right? Preganglionic, short axon, synapses with the postganglionic neuron, has a long axon, goes right to the target cell. Parasympathetic, the cell bodies in the brainstem or the sacral spinal cord, so either at the most superior portion or most inferior portion of your spinal cord, brainstem or your sacral portion of the spinal cord, and they have long preganglionic neuron axons and short postganglionic neural axons. All right, sending the signal. All right, so what does that lead to? Sympathetic nervous system characteristics. So the preganglionic cell bodies originate in thoracic, upper lumbar spinal cord. All right, sympathetic ganglia are generally located near the spinal cord. Right, so for us, if it's part of the sympathetic, it's part of your fight or flight response. The ganglia are located near the spinal cord. Fight or flight, the sympathetic version of your autonomic nervous system prepares your body for emergency situations. Vital when the body's engaged in any type of physical work. It also helps your body respond to emotion. Your parasympathetic, they have a long preganglionic axon, short postganglionic axon. Right? Cell bodies are located within the nuclei of several of the cranial nerves, in the brainstem, and in the sacral region of your spinal cord, so the superior and inferior portions of your spinal cord, basically. Right, sacral nerves innervate structures within the pelvic cavity. Cell bodies of postganglionic neurons are usually located near the target organ, right? Because the preganglionic axon is long, therefore the postganglionic axon is short, so it's near that second. Remember, it's a 2-neuron pathway. That second neuron is close to whatever that target organ is. So it requires only short axon to make a connection. It's the rest and digest division, right? And this is how it's sort of set up, right? So your parasympathetic, long axon initially, your preganglionic axon, and then the second neuron is close to the target organ. It's in the brainstem, top, just above just superior to the spinal cord, or in the sacral region of the spinal cord, the most inferior portion. And then you have these in the sympathetic version, the sympathetic section of your autonomic section of your peripheral nervous system, right? You have short preganglionic. These are the ganglia, these are the cell bodies, and then you have longer postganglionic to go to the whatever target organs it is. Okay, so understand this is all focusing on the peripheral. This is your central nervous system. I mean, this is your nervous system, specifically the peripheral nervous system. And then once you get in the peripheral nervous system, specifically the autonomic division of your peripheral nervous system. And then this breaks it down further into your parasympathetic and your sympathetic divisions, which are the two divisions of your autonomic nervous system. Right, and that's the end of 14.1.